Hello there and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Ariana, otherwise known as the Progressive Brat, and today I am here on 9/11 to speak to you about the impact that 9/11 left on Middle Eastern Muslim Americans, or Middle Eastern people in general, the community that was largely targeted and hated post 9/11. I know that this is a sensitive topic. I personally was not even planning to make this video just because I feel a lot of grievance when it does come to 9/11. It's a very, very, very sad day for not only Middle Eastern people, but also Americans too. And I would never want to overshadow the nearly 3,000 American lives that were lost and the families that continue to mourn those losses from the direct impact of 9/11. With that being said, I believe that the Middle Eastern community and the Muslim community really faced a huge amount of hatred post 9/11. The depiction in the media, the way people spoke about Middle Easterns and Islam, and the way people feel about it in general. I mean, I think up to this day, that hatred, that resentment from the 9/11 attacks still exists to this day. As a child who grew up during 9/11, as a Muslim Middle Eastern little girl that grew up during this post 9/11 hate, I think it really shaped my identity and the self-hatred that I had developed from my own, background, because of things that I couldn't even control. I was a kid. All I would see is just all this anti-Islam, anti-Middle Eastern, Middle East hate, and I would let that project onto myself and my identity. Obviously, I grew out of that, but I think it's still an important sentiment to talk about. I don't think we talk about it enough. I don't think we talk about what Middle Eastern people went through enough post 9/11. And also, Muslims in general. That being said, if you haven't already, make sure you like, subscribe, and comment on this video. I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible. I could go on talking about this all day, but I know you have things to do. If I do look down at my laptop, it's because I'm looking down at my notes, and as usual, all the sources will be linked down below. According to a Pew Research report, in March 2001, only 45% of US adults had a favorable view of Muslim Americans. Now, this isn't very surprising because according to Brown University, hate crimes against Muslims spiked 5,000% from 2000 to 2009. There was a huge, huge, huge spike in hate crimes. There was a huge spike in general public hate towards Muslim Americans. On a state and federal level, surveillance programs like the Bush administration's Registry of People from Muslim majority countries led to the detention of thousands of Muslims as well, that I don't think is talked about enough either. And I have linked that below if you want to learn more about that. I don't want to sit here and spew statistics at you because that is dry, but I think starting this off with a little bit of just national statistics and data about the public outlook of Middle Eastern Muslims is important to really capture the whole entire analysis in depth that I'm trying to give. In 2017, a survey found that half of US adults said that, and I quote, "Islam is not a part of mainstream American society," end quote. What that means, I'm not even sure, because we have many Muslims in America, including not just, Middle Eastern Muslims, but Muslims of all ethnicities and races. So, to even think that Islam is not a part of mainstream American society it's so absurd to me, because we look at ourselves as this melting pot of different ethnicities and religions, but yet we have continuously alienated Muslim Americans from the American society. And I think this study, and mind you, this study was done in 2017. We're not talking about this study was done in 2001 or 2005. This was fairly recent. And for people to still think that way about Muslim Americans right now, like within the past 5 or 6 years, just shows how much detrimental damage 9/11 and the 9/11 attacks left Americans and their viewpoint of just Muslims in general. Americans were more likely to say that they believe Muslims face a lot of discrimination than to say the same about other religious groups included in the survey, including evangelical Christians and Jews, right? And this is a study done by Pew Research. So I think many of us can admit that this hatred was also happening on a grander scale. Like I think many of us not only saw it, but we acknowledge it too. And I think this research is a real testament to that. I read a LA Times article that I will link down below about the experience of Middle Eastern Muslims or just Muslims within America post 9/11. And I had to grab this quote while I was reading this article because this quote just really spoke to me personally, especially as a little girl that had to grow up post 9/11. But this quote says, "Some Muslims in the United States think about their lives as having two distinct chapters, before 2 planes crashed into the World Trade Center and after. Then there's a generation that has known only a world which one terrible day changed their country." I guess I was lucky enough to see American before 9/11, but this quote really got to me because I will never forget 9/11 changed our lives and the way that the public looks at us in general. I think there's a lot to blame for that, and I'll go into that later. Now, going over those statistics, I think we can both agree on a couple of things. Number one, the hate crimes against Muslims and Middle Eastern people around the world, but mainly in the US, grew substantially after the 9/11 attacks. I think we can both agree that the societal view of Middle Eastern and Muslim people in general across the world changed, but especially once again within the US. And I think we can finally both agree that the public outlook of just Islam in general also really changed and became an alienated part of society because correlating Islam to non-extremist practices became very hard. There's many different things that we can blame for this. Post 9/11, things largely changed for Muslim Middle Eastern folks. Not just Western countries, but just in general. Things changed drastically. Now, I can't really talk about this in 9/11 without bringing up a couple of names that I think are very important to memorialize, right? So we had the death of Balbir Singh Sodh of Arizona, who was a man of Sikh faith that was accidentally mistaken for being an Arab Muslim, and he was unfortunately shot to death. This man was not Arab. He was not Middle Eastern. He was a Sikh man wearing a turban, and he was mistaken for a Middle Eastern man, and he was murdered. He was shot to death right after 9/11 because the person that murdered him thought that he was Middle Eastern Muslim. We talk about people like Zohra Assemi, who is a Iranian American Muslim immigrant in New York. She was attacked in her own shop. She was robbed, beaten, sliced by a box cutter, and hit with a hammer, whilst being called a terrorist. Or we talk about places like the Dove World Outreach Center Church, who planned on burning Qurans on the 9th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. I can use this video and go on and on and on because, like I said before, the attacks against Muslims and Muslim Middle Eastern people in America grew by 500%. So I promise you, this list, it just goes on and on and on and on. And I don't want to spend all of my time just going over all of these terrible, heinous disgusting attacks, but it needs to be said and it needs to be brought up, because whenever I hear anyone speaking about 9/11, we constantly talk about the people that were directly impacted by it in New York, and that's absolutely right. We need to remember them. We need to remember the first responders. We need to remember the people that were directly impacted by the attack. But why do we never talk about all of the Muslim Middle Eastern people that were attacked for nothing? I mean, Balbir Singh was not even Muslim or Middle Eastern, and he was shot to death. The general hate that was manufactured, the general Islamophobia that was manufactured and spread by constant anti-Islam rhetoric and media coverage, just showed in the way that our society decided to react to it. Then we have the way that the media started to depict the Middle East. And I'm talking about the yellow, eerie, shots of just people living in these rugged stone buildings, these constant scenes of, white people saving Middle Eastern people in the Middle East. We started to fuel the fact that we were in Afghanistan to fight off terrorists and terrorism attacks within Western Hollywood media. We started filming how the American soldiers are going to save Middle Eastern children. We started filming all of these attacks in these eerie streets with, hijabi women or hijabi women being liberated by these white men. And we started to continuously, fuel this rhetoric. And not only Hollywood, but mainstream media as well. We have people like Tucker Carlson that go on Fox News. Tucker Carlson is one of the most watched people on cable right now. He starts going on cable news talking about Ilhan Omar, not even pronouncing her name correctly, and just attacking her for, 10, 15 minutes. You have people like Laura Ingraham going on Fox News using a Muslim woman's murder as fuel to incentivize people to support Trump. This Muslim woman, this hijabi woman, was attacked by an undocumented immigrant, and Laura Ingraham used her murder to fuel racist Trump anti-immigration rhetorics. We have people like Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingraham on Fox News using Middle Eastern murders, or using Muslim congresswomen like Ilhan Omar to fuel their Islamophobic hatred and their viewers' Islamophobic hatred. Then you have things like Hollywood depicting the Middle East as this rugged, disgusting, yellow casted third world country. And then you have movies like RoboCop, which shows the American military all advanced with these robots walking through the streets of Iran, stopping men from committing mass suicide with a suicide vest, screaming Allahu Akbar before he throws himself in front of a military robot. I mean, the whole entire depiction and treatment of Middle Eastern people just became screwed up after 9/11. People started hating Middle Eastern people. They started committing hate crimes against Middle Eastern Muslims. Muslims started becoming completely alienated by our society. Hollywood depicted Middle Eastern Muslims as disgusting, as repellent, as if the women constantly need liberation from their hijabs from white men, as if the American military is going in to help and support and liberate these Muslim countries. We have all of these false depictions, and nobody ever talks about it. How has it been going on for so long, and why have we never spoken about it? And this is largely why I did not want to talk about 9/11 or make a video about it. This topic makes me emotional. I think it's important to realize that Middle Eastern people and Muslims became largely forgotten after 9/11. And as a little girl who grew up during 9/11, during and post 9/11, I saw the fear in my mother and father's eyes while they were watching the TV and they were watching the towers. I will never forget, both of my dad's hands were on his head like this, and he looked at me so frightened. And now I understand why. And I cannot even imagine how many other Middle Eastern Muslim families went through that during that same exact time. That fear, knowing that they were going to be the most alienated, the most hated population in America for a very, very long time, but still having to muster up the courage to leave that house, knowing that they might get killed, knowing that they might get assaulted, knowing that they might get yelled at, screamed at, just for things that they can't even control. And this is why I didn't want to make this video because I get really emotional when I talk about this. But I hope that I was able to at least educate one person on how 9/11 impacted Middle Eastern Muslims, especially Middle Eastern Muslims within the United States, within this country. As always, thank you so much for watching my video. Make sure you like, subscribe, and comment for more. I am Ariana, otherwise known as the Progressive Brat. I have a pretty good following on TikTok, so if you do like this content, I make short form videos on TikTok as well, and I upload every single week, so make sure you follow, subscribe for more. Thank you. Have a good day, y'all.